Hi, folks. I'm Dan McDermott, and this is a little news hangout. I'm doing a little earlier than usual because I have a show I've got to do tonight in Front Royal. So joining me for now is Thaddeus. Thaddeus, welcome. Good to have you with us. This is the first hangout together, so it's great to finally meet you.
Thanks, Dan. I appreciate that. Glad to come in for you.
Awesome. So I see you are a journalist. And as I look at your picture here, I see you've got a bunch of pictures on the wall and stuff. And I guess you're where you write, where you create. So tell me, tell me about your writing. I guess you have a blog and you do some freelance stuff. Give me a little bio.
Well, I didn't start off a journalist. Actually, I started off as an IT guy. I've been doing IT for 28 years. I've been doing computers for most of my adult life. And while I do computers, I do media. I write for a variety of different services. So I write. I did work for education. I did work for finance, advertising. So even though I was working with computers, I did it with a bunch of different industries. So my last industry was education. I taught as a college adjunct instructor, and I really loved that. I became a VP of IT for a university, and I loved it. It was the best part of the work I ever had. In the last few years, the industry started taking a strange turn, and then it became difficult for people who were really experienced to get jobs. And I know what that's from. Most of that's from the idea that people who are really experienced want more money, and companies are trying to pay less money. So I decided I would turn my writing skill into something else to do. So I started writing as a journalist and a tech journalist. And basically what I did was I wrote against the things that I dislike the most about the industry. So what I find that I dislike the most right now is the talk of the cloud and how important the cloud is. And everyone wants to try to convince me the cloud is the best thing that ever happened to humanity, and I still think it's the worst thing.
Oh, man, I want to disagree with you there, and I'll tell you why I like it, and then you tell me why I'm wrong.
Okay.
I think, I'm a newspaper publisher. I have 3 newspapers in Virginia, and we're almost entirely telecommuting. I have salespeople who will show up here and do inside sales where they're calling to businesses, and we have outside salespeople who are knocking on doors. And then we're printing one of our papers tonight, and one of the girls said that she expects to get some calls, so she took her headset and her Magic Jack, and we use Magic Jack for incoming calls, and we use Gmail to make outgoing calls. And Google Voice is the phone number when they call out. So she's just going to grab her headset and stuff, and she can go home, and the phone number travels with her. And all the documents that she uses are Google Docs. We have spreadsheets that we share that say, information about what ads are going in the paper. We have a Google Doc form which they can type in from anywhere and say, this is the advertiser name, do you have an ad we're going to work off of, all that stuff. And the layout guys are privy to it. Everyone gets an email as soon as a new record is added, so they know a new ad needs to be made. They could work from home for a day if they had to. So it's a tremendous boon for us. We're not emailing stuff back and forth. We're not having to take your jump drive with you. So in my, it's not for everybody, and certainly for laying out the newspaper, I can't imagine how slow it would be. Because it's so graphic intensive, because you're still limited by your bandwidth. But in our case, it's fantastic. So tell me why, it isn't the best thing since sliced bread.
All right, so what you're doing is not really the cloud. What you're doing, I did 10 years ago. I used to publish a small magazine, and most of what we did the same way you're doing it right now. There were technologies available. They were direct technologies. Unlike the cloud, it appears everywhere, and everybody can access it through a remote connection. But we were always able to do that, even now. If I decided I wanted to build a dedicated connection between me and any other person, I could still do that. There's software for that. The difference is now that data is being hosted by Google or whatever other cloud provider you're using to give you access to those tools. But these tools have always existed. So what you're doing isn't the problem I have with the cloud. What you're doing is basically a smarter, wider network. When I talk about the cloud, what I'm really talking about is the idea that right now your business is in multiple locations because you have people in multiple locations. And so you're distributing your network through the internet. But what I'm talking about is when a company says, okay, I've got 10,000 people who work for me, and they're in 6 different locations, and we store all of our data in a centralized server that's not in anybody's location. Everybody interacts with that server, and everybody interacts with that data. But what happens should the internet go down? If you lose your internet connection at any one of your sites, those people stop being able to connect. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it does mean that if enough connections get lost, or if the connection is lost at the central site, then no one works. The internet doesn't go down that often. We know that. But I know that as more people use it, as more technologies get involved with it, as the number of distributed phones and other smart media join the internet, this will become a problem as the stability of the network becomes more challenged. And that's what I'm worried about. It's not today. Today the cloud is a nice idea. But 5 years from now, when 25 or 30 million people are simultaneously accessing the internet from any number of devices, will the internet be as stable? And what happens when people lose their internet connectivity?
Okay, I hear what you're saying. I'm going to go to Alan in a second. I hear what you're saying, Thaddeus, but we saw what happened, I guess, yesterday when Gmail went down for some period of time. And there were news stories on every blog in the world, right? Because, oh, my God, Gmail went down. Doesn't that apply the kind of a degree of pressure to these companies to put backup systems and make sure it's okay? And are you sort of running the risk of being Chicken Little, the sky's falling down, woe is me, I'm worried, and not being realistic that these are mature companies that have been through outages before, and that we shouldn't turn down the potential advantages of a cloud-based system where you can be in multiple locations out of fear that something might go wrong?
All right, so I wrote an article last night. I was talking about this. I just sent it up. It hasn't been seen yet. But in the article, I question the idea. I say right now, the internet is 467 billion gigabytes of data. That's an estimated amount of data. That means if I gave every person on Earth 2 iPods of the highest quality and said, your part of all of the world's data will be on your 2 iPods, but I have to give it to every person on the planet if I wanted to back up the internet right now today. That's a huge amount of data. But wait, there's more. In 18 months, the amount of data will double. So let's say it's 500 billion gigabytes today. 18 months from now, it'll be 1,000 gigabytes. And 18 months after that, 2,000 gigabytes. What's happening to all this data? It's not getting backed up because we're making it faster than we can back it up. We're not keeping it safe. We're not storing it anywhere. And nobody's asking the question of, in 3 years, when we have 2,000 billion gigabytes of data, how is it safe? How can we protect it? Your company will be on the internet that way. And yet no one has said to me, I have heard no one say, we are backing up the internet someplace away from the internet.
We'll get Zuckerberg to give us the copy he has of all of our data. Go ahead, Alan.
That's kind of an interesting assertion. I mean, you started with nobody's backing it up, and yet all of the companies that do provide critical business cloud operations, the Microsofts, the Salesforces, the Googles, do say that they have their data backed up.
They say.
Well, and that's okay. That's a good point also. But here's, I guess, where I come from. I've worked with companies that have set up their server in their server room, and they've got the networks, and they've got the backup tape, so they have their copy of the backup. Mm-hmm. And they know they've got their copy of the backup. They rotate that tape every day. They take the tape off site. They're positive they've got this copy of the backup.
But it doesn't work.
One day the server crashes, and they say, no problem, we have a backup. And they go to restore the backup, and it's blank.
And that is what I'm afraid of, right there.
Well, but here's my feeling. They've got, instead of having hundreds of thousands of companies creating blank backups, instead, we are trusting, and admittedly, we are trusting 5 or 10 big companies who actually know what they're doing. And there have been some pretty good indications that they do know what they're doing. Microsoft, when they had that tremendous outage, what was it, 6 months ago now, they recovered nearly all of the data that was lost. And they recovered it because they did have good backup practices in place. I'll be honest, I trust Google, and I'll trust Microsoft too, and I'm not a huge Microsoft fan. And, you know, I trust these big guys far more than I trust myself to make good, solid, reliable backups.
And that's a fair statement. In my article, I mentioned that about 30% of the internet is backed up by those mega corporations, these big, giant corporations. So what we're saying is we're basically depending on them to do their job. And in theory, if they want to stay in business, they're going to be doing their job. But I also know, having done those kinds of networks, that it is theoretically possible that all it takes is one person to make one mistake, and all of your backups have no value whatsoever. You know this, and I know this. And it still doesn't deal with the question of, in 3 years, the internet will be 4 times as large as it is today. 3 years after that, it'll be 8 times as large as it is today. Do we have a cohesive, structured plan that says, here's how we keep your data safe? In the event of any kind of catastrophe, I liken it to an organism growing old. As an organism grows old, we know that that organism's experiences aging. Right. It slows down, it gets weaker, it loses its memory. We talk about Alzheimer's. So will the internet experience similar degradation over time? Will it age? And if it ages, what does that age look like?
I think it's a very good question. I think to look at the answers, though, we have seen, a great example of that is if you look at what happened with Usenet, for example. Usenet, it was in some ways the original source of tons and tons of the information and conversations that were generated today. And as it began to decay, people said, hey, wait a minute, what's going to happen to these decades of information that have been posted here? And companies stepped up and said, this information is valuable, and we are going to archive it for posterity. You've got organizations like the Internet Archive,
right,
who have systematically gone about and trying to archive websites before they go down. We do have people that are doing this. Am I concerned? I think it's a legitimate concern. I think you're asking really good questions, but I think we have models and examples of answers already.
But we don't have a systematic model, and that's the problem I'm worried about. As the internet's growing exponentially, there is no systematic plan for doing what you're talking. You're saying we're depending on company A and company B to do their parts, to assure that they are doing the best they can with the tools that they have.
But here's the thing. That's the internet. The internet has always been, we're going to assume that company A and company B are going to do their parts. That's how the internet grew. That's how it thrived. That's how we got to where we are today. We never, ever relied on a central organization to do something. And where we did rely on a central organization to do something is where the internet is the most fragile that it is. And and that's in both a technical and a social context.
But now my question, and here's the reason that all of these questions came up. When you're saying we didn't rely on them in the past, we relied on companies that did this versus any centralized organization or centralized agency. This was also before we decided that the internet would be the end-all and be-all to how we run our businesses. Because what we're basically doing is moving our businesses from our desktops into the internet, and my business might be on a server in Taipei, and it might also be on a server in Singapore, and it might also be on a server in Japan, and now my data is no longer with me.
No, that's an interesting argument. But before we had this data sitting on our desktops, we had this data sitting in a mainframe. And that mainframe sometimes was under our control, and sometimes it wasn't. I mean, when you look at companies like CompuServe, for example, they got their start by providing mainframe services to people. When you look at IBM, there was once upon a time when they were essentially running data centers for other people to use.
That's true.
So
Hey,
in a way that we're going
should-
back to this distributed model, this isn't new. This is something that has been there. I'll turn it back over to you, Dan, since I need to step away.
I was just going to say, I'm surprised we kept the viewers as long as we have. We're getting in the weeds. But I hear what you're saying. It's an interesting argument. Oleg, do you have a final thought on this? And then we'll move to something else?
Yeah, basically, I mean...
Oh, unmute yourself. We muted you because of the kids. I'm sorry.
Okay, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Still can't hear you.
I'm, more. Hello?
Yeah, trust me, you'll know when he's unmuted.
I still can't hear him.
It says
It won't let you unmute yourself, Oleg? This is awful. He's like one of our star attractions on the show.
I think his mic's not picking up.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah.
There we go.
Okay.
Do you have any thoughts?
Okay.
Do you have any thoughts on this before we move
Yeah,
on?
basically, I agree with most of the stuff Alan said. The difference where I disagree with Thaddeus respectfully, but quite a bit, is that Thaddeus, in my view, you cannot look at the internet as an aging human body. It's not. You're not taking into account the innovation that's taking place on a daily basis moving forward. So you got to keep that in mind. When you say what's going to happen,
Here's where I disagree with you, Oleg.
Okay, I'm not done yet, though. I'm not done yet for disagreement. So what's happening is that when you're looking at technology, the way it evolves and the way it moves forward, you got to take this into account. And it's impossible for you sitting here, you and me, sitting here right now, to look into 3 years from now to see where the technology will be, because literally on a daily basis, we're getting all kinds of reports from people about innovations in many different areas, both in storage, in processing, in size of the computers, all that kind of stuff. Nanotechnology is flourishing. There's a lot of things that are going on that are going to be coming out as we speak, and in 3 years from now, we may be in a totally different situation in terms of backups, everything else that we were before. Now, one of the things where I totally agree with Dan about the cloud stuff and why I think it's so good is because many companies, I'm basically being in similar shoes to yours in terms of running IT needs for different companies. The problem that they have a lot of times is they don't have the staff to handle what needs to be done from the IT perspective, and that's where they fail. So they hire people like you and me to help them out, but the maintenance of computers and everything else is still being done in this kind of, oh my God, fire is on, let's go Oleg and get it fixed, as opposed to be running it like Google, where they're continuously building out an infrastructure. They have smart, intelligent, and educated people on the subject manning this machine. So what's happening with the cloud, it's not so much the storage part, it's the maintenance that you take off and don't need to deal with anymore. Because I had a client who had about 20-some people on a hosted exchange, and I realized hosted exchange is not exactly running it locally on Exchange server, but it's a similar setup. They had the server, and they were using their email accounts. They were paying $1,200 a month, and they had to, and this was hosted, so they didn't have to mess with maintenance so much. If they had it as an Exchange server in their own company, they would have to have somebody administering it, managing it. If there's any problems, you know, like you said, internet can go down. Internet has not gone down anywhere near compared to how many of my IT clients go down using their own infrastructures. So from that standpoint, cloud is more reliable, at least so far historically it has been. At the same time, you eliminate a bunch of costs because I put them on Google Apps accounts instead of using Exchange. Now they're not paying anything. And I realize it's not necessarily pro for the cloud, but it's a concept of them not needing to manage the infrastructure and deal with it. They just deal with their emails and deal with their documents. And also, you know, the fact that I can sit here and talk to you over there without having a dedicated connection or some sort of server to the video exchange. Can you still hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, because I got some problem here. That tells also is a big plus for the cloud because we can do these kind of things now where we could never do it before within our own infrastructures. And so everything winds up being more available, more open, like then, so people can work from multiple locations. That's because of the cloud. Because if I had an Outlook account on my laptop, I could take laptop anywhere and still be configured, it would still work with an Exchange server.
No, Dan, Oleg, it's not because of the cloud.
Yeah, of course it is.
No, it isn't. You can
Cloud is nothing more than offsite,
Cloud-
basically,
the cloud is just-
maintained infrastructure.
The cloud is just distributed. I should try that more often. The cloud is just distributed computing, and I understand your point with that. Distributed computing and dial-in computing has been around for decades. That's not new. I mean, I think when we say cloud, we're talking about who is responsible for it, and if I understand you correctly, Thaddeus, that's what you're questioning.
Yes.
Is who is ultimately responsible.
And I'm not saying that it's any particular person's job. All I'm saying is I don't feel like we are asking the question that we should be talking about when we say, yes, the cloud. Listen, I write science fiction, all right? So I know about advances in technology, and I know them all. I know where they're going to come from. I talk about what they're going to do, how they're going to do it. But I also know that every time we make a new advance, there's always this period where we have to break it in, evolve it, use it, watch it break, watch it be rebuilt, retuned, redone until it works. And then those periods of transition is when things tend to go wrong. And all I'm saying is everybody's just clamoring, just do this thing right now. And I don't hear anybody saying, let's be sure that we're making the right decision. We're just making decisions. And
But do you have an example? Thaddeus, do you have an example of a major failure of this particular movement?
How about the security failures that this current protocol has set up? It has allowed people from pretty much anywhere. Matter of fact, I can give you the perfect example. Using the Amazon EC Squared server, they used that to hack into the Sony distribution network and steal 75 million passwords and security and credit card information from the Sony server. And that was only possible because the cloud made it so easy and so friendly. So while we're building all these new technologies, we haven't fixed any of the old issues with the internet. We have not made it more secure. We have not made it more stable. We have not put in any means by which we can track things more effectively. We're still using the infrastructure that was built 40 years ago to do things that it was never designed to do. Everything that we've done to the internet, we have bolted onto it and added onto it. So we've built a Ferrari on top of a Model T.
That's true.
Oleg, there are several examples within the past year that illustrate the fragility of various aspects of the cloud. You can look at the Amazon AWS failure of a few months ago.
No, I'm not talking about the fact that we don't have. I'm talking about massive unrecoverable failures.
The Gmail failure from the other day.
I'm talking about massive unrecoverable failures. Have you lost any Gmail?
I would say the AWS failure is pretty massive.
Okay, let me ask Thaddeus another question. How about the banks? Do you think banks have an infrastructure that's secure enough?
No. And honestly, and here's why I know there's an issue. I read several security publications, and one of the things I've learned about the internet is people do not want to advertise the fragility of their networks. They will keep that to themselves. For every one that we learn, I'm certain there's 10 we don't know about.
Sure, you're right. You're right.
Banks knew, if people knew how unsecure banking was, they probably wouldn't do that. And banks make a huge amount of their money now using this technology, so they're not going to report anything.
Yeah, and may I add that we don't need necessarily a whole lot of examples of failures that happen right now. Let me illustrate with this little ditty here. Will you walk into my parlor, said the spider to the fly. 'Tis the prettiest little parlor that ever you did spy. The way up into my parlor is up a winding stair, and I've many curious things to show you when you're there. Oh, no, no, said the little fly, to ask me in vain, for who goes up your winding stair can never come down again. And the poem goes on, and you know how it ends. So all it takes is, is people not really thinking about the massive vulnerability that is there and the potential. I mean, we know.
Well, it's no question. We can talk about doomsday all the time. I mean, 21st of December is coming. Iran is going to start up World War III. I mean, there's all kinds of things that we don't know that may happen. I'm just saying, if you look at the amount of failures businesses had with their own infrastructures over the years, and then you compare it to the amount of failures that happened and I'm not diminishing them, I'm just saying the amount that happened using this new approach, I think this new approach has held up so far relatively well compared to how many failures people have before.
And I will agree with you. All I'm saying is we are watching an explosion. This is an explosion captured in slow motion. We're going to see another 100 million smart devices appear on the internet in the next year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
100
How do you
million.
know? How do you know that Google does not have an infrastructure being built as we speak to handle it? How do you know that?
Again, I'm not doubting this. What I'm saying is we are watching. It's like watching a bomb blow up. From a distance, it doesn't look like much. But if you're a little bit closer, you might feel a little bit more. And I suspect as this explosion of smart devices and internet connectivity and the idea that people will want to bring more data to the cloud and get more data from the cloud, we're going to start seeing levels of data transmission, packet transmission, information management, and security protocols that have not been addressed, that will need to be addressed, and they need to be addressed today. And I don't hear anybody saying, we're addressing this, solve these problems before they become big problems. That's what I'm saying.
Well, I mean,
I'm
people
not saying
are
it's
trying
not
to address
evolving.
it.
I'm not saying it's not cool. I'm simply saying we're not doing our jobs.
I disagree. People are not addressing. Have you heard about Winton Cerf's speech at Google about the deal?
Say
That
again?
is?
I didn't hear you.
Have you heard Winton Cerf's speech at Google?
I don't think so. That's so much to keep up with now. I miss some things sometimes. Tell
Yeah,
me.
no, I know. If you have a chance, take a look. He's talking about IPv6 and how it would improve the infrastructure of moving data on the internet and how it will facilitate a more secure environment. I mean, people are definitely talking about it. People are definitely looking into these kind of issues, but they need to be adopted on a massive level, which, of course...
And I agree.
Bad example, Oleg, and the reason why it's a bad example is because IPv6 has been around for not quite 20 years. Probably
Technically about
15
years.
And it's taken that long to deploy, and the problems that existed 15 years ago are different than the problems that exist now. So IPv6 starts to address some of the security issues of 15 years ago. Right now, we've got DNS security issues that IPv6 was never intended to address at all. So we have new problems that have cropped up in 15 years that have barely been begun to be addressed.
Not to mention that IPv6 implementation, let's just say it hasn't been stellar. People are doing it. People are trying.
Some people, yeah.
Some people are trying to get it to work, but it has not been a stellar adaptation. So we are 15
True.
years behind the curve, and it might take 15 more years before we're all actually saying we have IPv6 in enough.
No, but my point was simply to contradict your statement that nobody is doing anything. Maybe they're doing things not necessarily fast enough, or maybe not. You know, we'll see if it's going to be fast enough. But I'm just saying that was just an example. I'm not saying that's the end-all solution. I was simply saying that people are talking and people are looking into us. I mean, yeah, Alan can make a comment and then Winton Cerf, and I tend, no disrespect, to go with Winton Cerf. There are people out there who build this infrastructure who are very, very smart in the area, and even though they may not be talking about it every day, that doesn't mean nothing is being done on the subject, or that Google
Well,
is
and I would certainly
the
call
world
Winton
and,
one
you
of
know,
the smartest
basically
in this field.
designing glasses.
But the problem is, even the researchers that are designing it, and I would call Vinton one of the smartest, and even the people who are designing secure DNS and designing those solutions, we still have to get adoption of those solutions. We still have to get these things pushed out. So that when you're talking from the point where you begin to identify a problem to the point where you're actually beginning to deploy fixes for a problem, if we're talking 15 years, that's 15 years too long.
We're not talking 15 years. We're not talking 15 years at all. It's just like a few years ago, there was no such thing as a Chromebook, running on an operating system that had all kinds of problems with security and everything else. Now there is. So the bottom line is that we don't know everything that they're working on, and it's silly to try to make ourselves to be experts and that we know and they don't and things like that. So far, like I said, the actual track record of what they've done so far with all the different technologies and everything has not been perfect, but certainly is usable, and we're using it every day. We bitch about it, but we're using it every day. I got a bunch of clients that are using, no business right now that has any respect is not using computers and internet and everything else like that for their business use, and they're using it. They're not stumbling through it. They're not falling on their face every 2 seconds. They're actually using it, and they're actually making it happen. And so somebody needs to get recognition for the fact that that it is working. It may not be perfect, but it is
But here's
working.
the thing, Oleg.
It was working.
Okay, we got
10 years ago.
last point. Let's move.
Microsoft and Oracle and Google certainly take credit for things when they go well all the time. So to say that they're not getting credit for it is pretty demeaning to them. But they get credit for it all the time. When things go bad, and
They also
on
get
occasion
blamed.
things go bad, they're pretty good at deflecting the problem.
If it doesn't work, Alan, it
I
doesn't
don't want to
work.
put words in Nathaniel's mouth, that I think he's saying when things are good, that's great. But we also have to think about what happens when things go wrong. And people aren't thinking
There's
enough.
a never-ending
Okay.
path, Alan.
Go wrong.
There's a
Okay,
never-ending path.
so we all agree. All right.
Of course we do, Dan. We always do.
Yes. Okay. So that's great. We can move on. All right. I want to ask Thaddeus. We've talked about this topic before. This is the first time I've had the pleasure of hanging out with you. So I want to get your opinion on the Trayvon Martin thing. When I first heard about it, I was like, my God, this is awful. And then we found then there was the thing that someone had doctored the tape to make it appear that he had said certain things in sequential order when he hadn't. And then you're thinking like, well, maybe it's a scam. And then they say that he was attacked from behind, and you're like, wow, and then you find out that then you see the video with him with no marks on him. But then you find out that he'd been cleaned up first, and his lawyer said that he had a broken nose and stuff. And then there's the question of who's screaming on the 911 tape. And then you find out, I mean, it's just on and on. It's just, I've gone back and forth on this, and now I'm just totally not making any kind of opinion on it, because we don't have a clue yet. And so now he's entered the justice system, so more facts will come out. So hopefully evidence will be introduced, and the public, can make up their mind. This reminds me of like the O.J. Simpson case and some others that were racially charged, and you had your first opinion, and then your opinion might have shifted, and then you went back, and you really didn't know, and then finally when the evidence came out, But I'm just curious what you think, Thaddeus, about A, I'm curious what you think about the case, and B, I'm curious what you think about how responsible or irresponsible the journalists covering the case have been.
Okay. What do I think about the case? I'm not real pleased with the case, to be perfectly honest. I think that all in all, the case has been, if the media hadn't been involved, it might have never even been known. So on the one hand, I say, yes, it is good the media was involved, because otherwise it might have never been known about. And from the point of view of a person of color, I have to look at the world differently than you do. I don't see the world the way you get to see it. I have to see it from the point of view of a person who is never felt safe. I have lived in America my whole life, and I've lived outside of America. So I've got the advantage of having been in other places. And in some of the places on earth that have been some of the most war-torn and terrible, I have felt safer than I do here. And that, to me, is a shame, because that means there's something inherently broken here. There's something inherently not working. So with how the case first came into being, there are certain things that we cannot deny. Trayvon Martin is dead. Nothing we do will fix that. Zimmerman did not get arrested. And under almost any other circumstance, he would have been arrested. But because of how the laws have been set up, he was not. Trayvon Martin sat in a morgue for 3 days. No one even bothered to ask if he lived in the neighborhood he was walking around in. There were simple oversights that didn't make sense unless you attribute malice to them. But I don't like to attribute malice to them. I don't like to say the police didn't make the effort to ask around and say, hey, anybody know this kid? I don't like to say that because it makes me feel like then when I tell my 8-year-old, when you see a policeman, you should go talk to him. You should feel safe talking to him. But I can't say that now because I don't feel safe talking to him. So there are many things, there are many feelings that come with this. And so now I have to look at this and say, well, is the justice system flawed? Yeah, there are things about it that's not right. How do we separate what is wrong with the system from what was wrong with that particular system? That particular system could be flawed, but the overall social system is flawed too because we have the same level of imbalance both at the small level and the large level. And for people like me who are able to see that the small reflects the large, it does not make me feel good. And it doesn't make me feel, I have 2 older sons. I worry about them. They're smart boys. They tend to stay out of trouble. But all it took for Zimmerman was, or all it took for Trayvon was to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. And God knows my sons go to the wrong place at the wrong time sometimes. Everybody does. And sometimes I have to question now, where is the wrong place at the wrong time? I'm not even sure I'm safe in my home.
Okay, let me say this. This country, in my personal case, I'm an Irish American. My great-grandfather came over when the potatoes rotted. So we didn't have any part in what happened prior to 1865. Oleg is a Russian emigre, a first-generation arrival, and a welcomed one. I don't know Bruce or Alan's history, but clearly America, basically Europeans came over, they killed the Indians and stole the land, and we don't have a wonderful past, and we enslaved Africans to build up an agricultural economy. So clearly this shining city on a hill has a few tarnished spots. To those of us who are, in the majority, we don't experience what other folks do. And sometimes you can get a more positive view of the way society, functions than folks who are in a minority group, several minority groups. So, but I guess my first question for you, because I know you've studied this, looked at this story, and you have a great perspective on it. My first question is, while it's fair to judge upon sentencing once someone's been convicted, it's fair to look at background. But when you're deciding whether someone's guilty of something, this is going to sound awkward, but is it fair to judge someone in context? In other words, is it fair to say that because of these other wrongs that this person is likely guilty? Because we have heard, again, this is from the attorney who's been criticized on a number of fronts, but we have heard that he did serve as a mentor to minority kids. He was a neighborhood watch person. We heard that, all sorts of favorable things coming from his advocate, right? So granted, it's from his advocate, an important caveat. It's a horrible tragedy, but does it make sense to ask the question, is it fair to judge whether he's guilty in context? In other words, to bring up a rash of previous societal ills on race in this case, when really it's about whether this particular person did something wrong. Is that a fair question?
It is a fair question. To be fair to him and to be fair in general, none of us should really have any opinion at all. If this were going to be fair, this were going to be a fair conversation, none of us would have any opinion at all. He would have been, Trayvon Martin would have been shot. Zimmerman would have been arrested. They'd have gone off to the precinct. He would have been charged, and then they would have hashed out the facts, whatever they were, if this were fair. If the police had been doing their job and not referencing Zimmerman's previous past, because he supposedly had some issue with a father who has some interaction with the legal system. So if his records had not been cleared, he would have been seen as a person who had beat up a cop, went to jail, at least for a minute, got out of jail, and now was serving as a neighborhood watch person. Someone got shot. We'd have looked at that and said, well, that's not good, but at least we have a record of it. But so many things had to be found and discovered. You have to ask, how can this be a fairer environment? Is this even a fair, can we even make a fair assessment? Because so much of what has been found had to be found outside of the legal system. For that matter, he wouldn't have even shown up in the legal system if not for the ALEC laws that allowed him to escape prosecution in the first place, that allowed him to walk away. I felt threatened. The law says I can stand my ground. I shot him. The end. So he gets to go home. Is that even a...
The best comment I heard was on the McLaughlin Group. It was I forget the guy's name, the editor of the National Review, and he said that they all agreed that it would be very interesting to find out who was screaming on the 911 tape. You know, who was being assaulted prior to the gunshot. And but the best comment was it was from a right winger. I mean, hardcore right winger. And he said, you know, I really don't agree with Al Sharpton and these guys, but I got to say, if they hadn't made such a stink about this, this would absolutely not have been on the radar. It would have been another black kid got killed, and nobody would have, you know, talked about it on the national news. This reminds me of when George Clooney got arrested protesting something, and Chris Wallace, son of the late great Mike Wallace, said on Fox News Sunday, he said, you know, he said, I'm embarrassed to say that if you hadn't been arrested, we would not be talking about this topic on this show. So, you know, some of this street theater and drama and protest and stuff, it can really have an impact, and it brought this to the national stage. I still haven't decided which way to go. I don't understand, you know, because we've heard such dramatically different versions of the facts. Yeah, and we have so few facts that have been released because the police are keeping the interview results concealed for now.
Can I just cut you off there, Dan, for a second?
Yes, sir.
To bring up an important point. You say you don't know which way to go. I think, to me, and this is kind of where I've been going with this entire case since I first heard about it, is that, yeah, I'm going to have opinions, and I have opinions one way, I have opinions on the other. And, you know, I can see the facts as they unfold. But the reality is, and what's important in our country, is that we determine facts in a trial. And a prosecutor has to go before a grand jury before that trial to at least convince that grand jury that maybe there's a need for a trial.
Except in this case, no grand jury.
And even before then, we tend to have this presumption that we're going to arrest people on the presumption that maybe they will be needed for the grand jury. And no, we didn't have a grand jury in this case. We didn't even have an arrest in this case. We didn't even have a prosecutor who thought there was a case.
They've clearly reacted to public pressure, though, Alan.
Right.
And the fact that, as Bruce pointed out, there was no grand jury, which eliminated the capital murder option. You have in that state, in Florida, you have to go through grand jury for that. The fact that they avoided that and just straight up brought charges tells me that this is clearly a response to public pressure. And you can view that as a good thing or a bad thing, that they're actually responding to outrage. But I don't think there's any problem with the guy going through the judicial system. I think that's a good thing. I hope he's, you know, if that's the case, you know, if he's innocent, then he got screwed. If he's guilty, then it's a good thing. But I swear I've never seen such a yo-yo in my own mind on whether my first thought was, you know, my God, this is awful. This is some renegade, psycho, wannabe cop dude, and guns down some kid with Skittles. And then the lawyer, you know, I watched the lawyer talk, and he pointed out that they have, that the pictures they used were a 5-year-old picture of Trayvon when he was 12 and looked like an adorable kid, not the 6-foot-tall young man that he was at the time of the incident. They didn't use the Twitter picture of him flicking his middle finger off. And the picture that they used of Zimmerman was a several-year-old picture of him in a mugshot on charges that he was acquitted of, instead of the modern picture of him in a suit looking thinner and more attractive. So in both cases, you could see that argument, though. It's just fascinating to me to see there's so much legitimate grounds for criticism of the media coverage. We don't know the facts, right? And I hope that they come out, and I hope that however way this goes, either the guy murdered this young man, whose weapon was Skittles, and he was in the neighborhood in which he lived, or an innocent man is proven innocent. Either way it goes, I hope that it's unambiguously clear and we can put this aside. But it's still, even either way that happens, there will still be questions on both sides and concerns on both sides about the media coverage of this whole incident, because I think both sides have really run this up the flagpole.
And I think that gets to the heart of what has been shown increasingly to be a problem, and I think this really highlights it this time. And no disrespect to your industry, Dan, but the news media is really butchering case after case after case. And it's increasingly seeing that the people are trying cases in the media now more than actually trying to try them in a jury. And I think part of that is because we've got a history in this country of prosecutors and police and, in some cases, juries having serious problems.
There's a lot of passion in this whole situation, and my fear is that we've moved already so far to the place where objectivity, a clear sifting of the evidence, is really gotten to the place where I'm very pessimistic about, and I have no, I'm a concealed weapons carrier. I just got my my recent issue of Concealed Carry magazine that just came in the mail today. I'm a 61-year-old grandfather, and I never started carrying till I started taking my grandchildren out to the malls and the parks and the McDonald's and things like that. I'm a responsible citizen. I've been a Baptist pastor for over 35 years. I love life, and I would hope that I would never, ever be in a situation, like this one that developed. It is interesting to note, though, just for clarification, that every day, and there are always stories in any publication, whether it be like this or the National Rifle Association, of true stories where people have used a weapon in self-defense. I think what they're going to have to really be careful about is to keep in mind, a lot of people have made a big deal out of the stand your ground law. What this case is all going to be about is whether or not a shooting took place in self-defense or not. But when people every day who are involved in self-defense shootings, I'm looking here, pregnant California mom fights off 2 intruders, South Carolina kills armed restaurant robber, Oklahoma man foils daylight home invasion, California man shoots home invader, Texas mother defends home and child, Tennessee man stops a burglar, and all of these are self-defense shootings. None of these people are ever arrested right there on the spot. Some of them may be arrested later if a prosecutor decides there's evidence to think that they could have fleeing or backed off, or maybe they didn't do something right. But it's extremely rare that somebody is handcuffed and arrested at the point like that when the evidence by the investigating officers at that moment appears to show that it was a legitimate self-defense shooting. So rarely are people apprehended at that moment. Now, obviously, they sometimes will take these people into the police station to interview them and to get more of the story and the facts and this sort of thing. But I love our nation, and it grieves me the polarity that exists. It grieves me, and I've been in hangouts with Thaddeus, and Thaddeus is extremely well spoken and a super guy. It grieves me to hear him express what he's experienced in his life, it grieves me to see the polarization politically that we have in our nation, and everybody jockeying for position. And so instead of doing what's right by justice or right by politics, it seems that we're in a rush to expedience, and sometimes it takes time to sort these things out. So it's a very troubling situation to me, and I hope one way or the other. I mean, I've already shared with Dan, my position as a concealed weapons carrier. As soon as the police told me to back off, we don't need you to follow, it should have stopped right there.
There you go.
And the fact that it escalated from there, regardless of what happened after that, I personally would not have, pursued the issue any farther. But the fact is, it did, and so it is a tragedy of the highest order.
I think what concerns me about this is, as you say, you point out that not always do you have somebody arrested or someone taken into the station after an incident like that.
Mm-hmm.
What I think bothers me is how much I hear about people who are arrested or who are taken into the station or into custody for other lesser offenses.
I hear you.
Or
I agree
presumed
with
offenses.
you. I agree with you wholeheartedly.
I'm
Yep.
being careful in what I'm saying because I'm not trying to cast this as a racial issue, but it does seem like there are police groups, there are places, there are cities where you have to wonder, you have to wonder, can you get away with murder?
Mm-hmm.
Literally.
Yeah.
But you can't get away with carrying a dime bag of marijuana, or even carrying a plastic bag.
Or throwing flour on a television or a movie star.
Right.
I've read about some movie stars. She got some flour thrown on her. That woman was arrested just like that. Nobody was harmed. Nobody died. There's some flour. My dress is ruined. It'll have to be cleaned. That woman was taken away. It bothers me that justice is unequal. If she's not blind, she is at least unequal. I know anytime I've ever had a run-in with the police, I've always had to fear being arrested, whether I was involved in the incident or not.
Mm-hmm.
And so that makes me, like I said, when I said to you, when I wanted to tell my kid yesterday, hey, there go the police, you should always go to the police, I had to stop myself and said, nope, I can't tell him that.
Mm-hmm.
I was uncomfortable saying that. So this is the problem that we're now living in, because we live in two Americas. In my America, I don't call the police unless I really need them, because there's a chance when they get there, they'll be arresting me.
Mm-hmm.
And if someone else calls the police and I'm there, I might still get arrested, and I might not have done anything.
Let me ask this. This is a legitimate question, and I appreciate what we're doing in our country to try to have equality in workforces. My dad was a City of Miami Fire Department, and had a lot of police friends and stuff like that. And so we try to make sure we have people of color, people of various genders on police departments and so forth, Hispanic, African American, Anglos, whatever. Would you be more comfortable having your child go up to an officer of color to approach him with a concern? Would that be a better situation?
Honestly, at this point, my son's autistic, but at some point I'm going to have to teach him that there is someone he can talk to should he get lost. If he finds himself lost somewhere, that he should be able to walk up to someone in a uniform and expect that he can get support or help from them.
Absolutely.
Except that I don't feel comfortable with that, because I'll give you a perfect example. There was a news article in someplace in the Midwest. Family calls their autistic son. He's a 16-year-old. He'd gotten violent. They call the police to hopefully get some help. By the end of the interaction, the 16-year-old is dead. The police shoot him. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, so the police showed up. They were asking for help. The police shoot the child. It just seems like, how could that happen if I called you to help me, I'm the parent. I call you and say, my son is a little wild, can you help me? I'm feeling, a little threatened. And your solution is at the end of our interaction, 15 minutes after I call you, my son is dead. And they were a black family. And so for me, that article sat with me very poorly. And it made me think to myself, I have to really consider it. If I ever have to call the police for any reason, something could happen. And it shouldn't be this way.
Right.
It shouldn't be this way. I'm ex-military. I have served my country. I am law-abiding, tax-paying, focused, dedicated, educated citizen of the United States. I shouldn't have to fear that if I call the police for a legitimate reason, that I have to worry that I might find myself shot for something I'm calling them for. That's not comforting.
Do you live in a city or a rural area, Thaddeus?
Nowadays, I would call this a suburb.
Okay.
And I actually know the police in my town, which is interesting because having met them and talked to them, they know me. And when I call them, they send people I know, which is
one of the problems we're having now is, and then I want to see what Mike's got going on. One of the problems we have now in a lot of localities is the local police department is experiencing a dramatic turnover, and the good officers are going to the big federal jobs out there that pay more, and so you're getting all these rookies, fresh out of Afghanistan and Iraq, who don't have the judgment that it's like the Andy Griffiths are being replaced with the Barney Fifes in a lot of localities, and there's no substitute for the wisdom of a few gray hairs, and so that's a problem we're seeing here in Front Royal, and I think they've lost 6 in the last 4 months. They've lost 6 officers out of like 30, so it's a big deal. But let me ask Mike Downs in the UK. How you doing?
Dan, how you doing?
I know you got to run soon. What's the big
Well, no,
story you guys are dealing with?
No, I'm not running. I'm making a cup of coffee, but I thought I'd come in with Alan because we did this.
It's not tea? Figured it'd be tea.
No, it's 9:20 at night. I'm trying to stay awake, but no,
Oh.
I'm not changing the subject. I'm very happy to talk, law enforcement and stuff because I've been doing. Well, there's 2 things. First thing is I've been doing work with the local, UK law enforcement with social media and Twitter and the riots and all that sort of stuff. And the bit that I will say is I'm talking about, I'm an ex-teacher, of 7 to 11-year-olds, and if we said something like a child sat down, I'm talking about children here, or whatever, but I'm talking about the timeless part of patience. As if somebody said, right, I'm sitting on the playground, I'm not moving, and and in the UK we don't touch, children or handle them. We can now, but a few years ago. But what I'm trying to say is that if you say to the child, can you get up, please, and come inside, and they don't, then we might wait it out for a long time. But it seems to me, the Guardian in the UK just released a 4-minute video about Occupy Everything. It's from a tweet to a message to pepper spraying to everything. And I was thinking, where does the bit come in? Say with something like going back to UC Davis, where so the protesters were sat on the floor, and the officers said, "Can you move, please?" And they said, "No, we're not." And they went, "Okay." And then waited for 5 hours. They didn't, did they? They kind of wait. I'm talking about the whole, tension thing and pressure and time. I don't know if that's. I don't know if Thaddeus. I've not met. Sorry, Thaddeus or Bruce. I do know Gary. It's about of how as you know, in the UK, there are armed officers, circling cities, and they can be there within minutes and things. But generally, UK officers just they not generally they don't do they? They don't have guns. Tasers come out pretty quick. But I don't know. If are we losing our patience? Do you think with, law to say that that people maybe officers are steaming in a bit under pressure, where they could sit back? I don't know if that's a general point. It's not. I didn't.
I'll tell you what I really think. If you look at law enforcement today, I write science fiction, so I presuppose the destruction of the world at least once a week just for fun. I look at the number of police officers in the world today, and I look at the populations of the cities they live in. And, for example, New York has 7 to 12 million people at any moment in space and time. But their police force is about 750,000 people. So if New York were to suddenly lose its mind, I don't see 750,000 people stopping 7 million people. And I think the police have started to have this feeling that they are endangered. And their mind says there's distress, there's anxiety, and the bad guys are as well armed or better armed than we are in many cases.
Is that accurate? You're saying that there's a 1 in 10 ratio of police officers to citizens?
Oh yes. If you're that lucky. That's in a good city. In most cities, it's worse than that.
1 in 10? Are you sure?
Yeah. Police forces are tiny in relation to their populations. Tiny.
You're saying 750,000 cops to 7.5 million
An
people.
estimated 7.5 million at any moment. I think when New York is full during the middle of the day, there's like 12 million people living or in the city at that time.
I can't imagine there's a 1 in 10 ratio. That seems way high.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, my God,
the problem is
China doesn't even boast about those numbers.
You
Then
got
it's
me,
even
you got
worse.
me curious. So I did, quick look up. According to Wikipedia, and they give a stat of, in June 2004, there were about 40,000 sworn officers, plus several thousand support staff.
Well, then that
And-
means they're even worse off.
That's dropped and raised a couple of times, but that's a number as of 2004, to give you a rough idea.
And we're talking New York City, correct?
That is the New York City Police Department, as according to Wikipedia.
Then that's even worse.
So the population there is about 8.4 million, with 40. So what is it?
40,000, 50,000.
But I think
25% or something.
But I think both of you have made an important point, and Dan kind of said it in passing quickly, and he talks about how increasingly police officers draw their ranks from ex-military, so they're now going into it with a very military attitude. And I think that in some ways, you can understand why they do, you can understand why it's good in some ways, but you can also understand that, the role of a police officer is different than the role of a soldier.
A soldier.
And approaching it as a soldier, there are some conflicts that if you don't work out those conflicts ahead of time, you're going to have problems.
The peace officer is supposed to be about peace. Bringing peace, restoring peace, keeping the peace. And what we're finding is that the police nowadays shoot people and clean up later. That's not a position for people to be comfortable with.
Could I just raise a point which has nothing to do with this, because it's a small point, because it's something I'm not excited about, but I just want to know how big common knowledge it is. Only that this on air, Dan, is going out to talking about Google and everything. That we did this little test earlier on with iPhones and HTCs, and it will stream live straight to mobile devices like this and watch that show while they're sitting on the bus.
I was watching the on-air broadcast, Mike, earlier, and I passed that information over to Alan and to Dan while they were doing their thing.
No, so we tested it on an iPhone and it works. We've just got to get the fiddly bits out of which links you click and everything else. But the easiest way, and this is really interesting, is that everybody's been going on about this vanity URL and everything, about on airs and everything, very complicated. The easiest way that I think, who got it, Robert Reddell or Lord Miles, or whoever I tested it with, went to my channel, Mike Downs page / whatever, featured, and then it was just there. You click twice and the program just opened.
Yeah, I like that. I like the comments. There's some ghetto stuff, like if you put an extra enter at the end, it doesn't strip that out. Just some elementary, like 1990s things you would have done that they don't do. Apparently, they're getting ready to bring Google Plus commenting system to YouTube.
Yeah,
for the on-air hangouts.
Mm.
We're still, I don't know if we're listed in the live yet. I think when you go to youtube.com/live, I think you're still only seeing the super partner approved live streams. I don't think we're there yet.
However, I can show you this. I can screen share with this, because if I go to my subscribers and I subscribe to somebody, I think is you. Oh, it's gone now. Give me a second, but in other words, when I was looking at my subscriber list in YouTube, and because you were broadcasting, it said Dan McDermott, red dot, and then live next to it, and that was showing me in my feed that you were actually live. And I know that's not overall.
On
but it is
YouTube or
actually
Google Plus?
No, YouTube. This is why I want to find it, because I just went in there 10 seconds ago, and there was a little. Let's have a look here. I will show it to you. And then the other thing is that it does actually go to. Yeah, let's get to my feed. Here we go. So in other words, I think it's amazing, because I heard a couple of months ago, somebody said to me from a news station that to stream their TV broadcast direct to an iPhone or an iPhone app used to be a one-off fee of something like $25,000 or something like that. And now that is kind of like, just, well, we've got it for free, haven't we? Let me
It was how much?
Well, he reckoned that it was, you got a TV station, and they go they go to your digital channel. They may go to a web URL. To have an iPhone, and many iPhones for like whatever news station it is, do not have the capability to stream the live news channel. They'll have recorded videos and stuff, but not the actual live element of it. To get that live element, he said it was a one-off fee of about $25,000, maybe a couple of years ago, to get it done.
Wow.
Yeah, I know, to actually get that set up. And it's the old story which we talk about all the time, of course, is that they want the viewer sat at home in front of their analog, HD telly, not actually wandering about the place on URLs or on now mobile devices as well. So
well, Mike, in the United States, I mean, they make money per. I know in England with the BBC, of course, there's the tax that pays for it. For anyone watching who doesn't understand that there's you have a television license, right? Still.
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So everyone has a license if you have a television, and you don't have to pay it if you don't have a TV. But if you have a television, you have to get a license.
No, that's not right. There's a very interesting thing here. To watch live television in the United Kingdom, you have to have. Oh, let's stop that. You have to have a TV license. Okay, was it £120 a year or something? I don't know, something like that. If now, and this is the interesting part, if you have a television, and even that means to say that you did not have a television, but you have a laptop, but you happen to watch live TV on that laptop, you still need a TV license. So anybody has to have one. However, what the BBC done have waived their rights until 2015 for people who do not watch live and do not digitally record. So if the guy knocked on your door and said, have you got a TV? Oh, yes, I have. Have you got a laptop? Yeah, I've got loads of them. Do you watch live TV? No, I don't. Do you digitally record any programs? No, I don't. So in other words, if the 6 o'clock news was on, it finished at 6:30, and at 6:31 I clicked my laptop to watch it on the BBC iPlayer, I do not need a TV license for that. Now, that is a big loophole which is open until 2015, where the BBC could lose truckloads of money. They estimate it's something like 0.7% or 0.07%. I think if people latch on very quickly and realise that they don't actually need TV licenses, then the UK BBC could be in trouble.
Especially, I mean, £120 is $250 a year for American viewers of this. That's a chunk of change, and it's paid all at once, correct?
No, it can be paid monthly, but I think the point of it is that even if you're watching, you have to have the license to watch live television, irrespective whether you say, actually, I do not watch the BBC or BBC Two, I only watch Sky or ITV, which are the commercial independent channels. So you've got to have it if you watch live TV.
That's a lot for just, it's just 2 channels, right? When I was there, it was 2 BBC channels, and then 4 and ITN or whatever. I don't know, but it's interesting because that's where the BBC gets their funding is from the government. It's like PBS in the United States, but people actually have to pay to have a television.
Yeah. However, if you've heard of Top Gear, right? Where
yes.
Top Gear, the motoring show, because that is one product which has gone to BBC worldwide, and they can shovel income off of that product all around the world. Now, this is an interesting one. The BBC World Service, which I'm sure you've heard of, from the radio days and all the rest of it, they have just started to do within the last 6 to 8 months web advertising, which is absolutely unprecedented because it's advertising, and the BBC do not advertise because they are the BBC. And without them changing their own rules, they will. And there's already things in the UK saying that they're going to lose 2,000, redundancy jobs, 20% of their income, and all of these things because the license fee is frozen until, can't remember, 2 or 3 years in the future. So they've got all these things that are shrinking, and everything is going badly, awry.
They have a massive budget, and it's because of the tax that goes, to them. It's a very different model than here in the United States. And But the way it works in the United States is the reason you can't buy a la carte is if you think about it, like when a cable system buys a channel, like Fox News Channel or C-SPAN, and they're mandated to buy C-SPAN. That's why you get it. It's not optional any more than at Lowe's or Walmart. The trees in front of the store are optional. The zoning people make them plant those trees because they're very expensive to plant and maintain, and they wouldn't do it otherwise. It would just be cement. But a cable system has to carry C-SPAN. And so a TV channel, it used to be that the TV stations were worried that the cable channel wouldn't carry them and that they would be cut out. So the FCC created the must-carry rule, where if you're a Class A station as opposed to a low-power, TV or low-power, whatever, then they had to carry you. Then the TV stations started saying, well, we want to charge the cable companies. So then they come up with a consent agreement, it's called. And you'll periodically hear stories in the news about TV stations duking it out with the local, cable company about, and then the cable company will cut them off, or the TV station will cut them off until they agree. And so the amount of money involved can be significant. For like an ESPN, it could be, $5, $10 or more a month per subscriber. For a typical local channel, a big city channel, it could be $4 a month per subscriber.
Can I show you this, Dan? Because I found it. Talking about subscribers, here's my YouTube channel. Subscriptions, whatever. Scroll down, and there's a few different things. Keep going, just to there it is. It says today's
news. Oh, it shows you that it's live.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, it's got your picture of you, and it says the word, the big grey red rectangle red dot of live. So it does actually. I've spotted it. So if I'm a subscriber, which I am of you, then bingo, it's there. Yeah,
this and then if you just on straight up Google Plus, if you go to Hangouts, we're there with CNBC and Brock Podovich, so that helps too. I mean, I guess we have 11 live now on YouTube, and I don't know if Google Plus is integrated with that, if that's the same number. But anyway, so the reason that cable channels are reluctant to let you buy a la carte is they don't want to mess with the current system. Because, like, let's say Fox News gets $4 per subscriber. I have no idea what their number is, but let's, for argument's sake, that means if you're in a town with 30,000 subscribers, they're getting $120,000 every month. So they don't want to mess with that, because if you figure not everyone watches Fox News, not everyone watches MSNBC, not many people watch C-SPAN, but I'm glad it's there, and it's only there because they have to do it. So if they went to an a la carte system, how much would they have to charge?
Dan, C-SPAN is a bad example. That's actually one that the cable companies created. That's not.
That's what they say. It's correct, but it's funded by the cable companies. But it's mandatory that they cover that. The FCC requires that. I talked to a station owner, and he said that they have to carry it, and that's why everyone carries it, because it's not at all a highly rated program unless we're deciding whether or not to go to war against Iraq. Or some big debates going on. It's not optional that they cover that and that they buy it, and that's how they do it. It's like a public service thing, in the same way that they have to air so much public service content and the former equal time provisions.
Right.
But the problem is they get paid right now. The cable channels get paid for every subscriber in the system, Alan. If they went a la carte, they would only get paid for the people who watch, and the amount of money they would have to charge for the people who watch, like current TV. Can you imagine? I mean, everyone would be paying, $10,000 a month to get it, because so few people watch it. And we've lost Alan now.
So in other words, you're talking about it being distributed so that everybody pays only a tiny amount for all the services, no matter how many of them they watch. But if they brought it to an a la carte protocol, then some shows everyone would, or some networks everyone would watch, and others no one would watch. But wouldn't that actually improve the overall quality of the environment, in theory?
The problem is it might improve the overall quality, but you would also lose the less popular ones. Well, no, it wouldn't improve the overall quality. It wouldn't improve the overall availability. What it could do is eliminate ones that are high quality but low demand. This is the long tail argument. And this is where things like Netflix and YouTube are increasingly going to be making their money, isn't on the big things that you can get from your cable provider. It's on the teeny tiny things that your cable provider isn't willing to carry because it's not worth it to them.
We all know,
YouTube.
right, we all know that, Alan, correct me if I'm wrong, we all know that if C-SPAN were optional, if you could uncheck C-SPAN, that...
C-SPAN is a bad example, Dan, really. Let's use something...
No, it's not it's a great example. If you could uncheck C-SPAN and say, okay, my cable bill goes from this much to this much, I'm not going to watch or I don't want to pay for C-SPAN. If it was optional, then they would be out of business in 48 hours. 100%.
Well, I say C-SPAN is a bad example simply because there are the issues with C-SPAN are more complex. I think possibly something like PBS might be a better example.
PBS or any niche channel, like if you were like Univision, if you were in an area that had very few Latino viewers.
See, but here's the thing. Univision in a lot of places is part of a separate package. It is part of a separate purchase.
I think that you'll find cable is regionalized in general, that different areas will promote cable packages based around the areas that people are in and the population density. So it's probably already a little regionalized, but I think that they're trying to avoid doing a la carte for that very reason, that some systems would simply just disappear, and they don't think that that would be ideal. But on the other hand, if you look at what people pay for cable in America, it's outrageous. There's no competition. So you're forced to pay whatever they're charging, and believe me, Comcast, they charge a lot of money for cable out here. This is California. If you have 2 TVs and 2 cable boxes, you're looking at probably $180, $200 a month.
Well, I'm sure the marketers have got this figured out far better than we have. They've crunched these numbers, and they know how to do it. They probably can modify it, season to season, depending on utilization. They just look at the bottom line is the numbers. But there's packages like the golf club channel and the sports channel, and
Yeah, I pay $5 a month for television. I have a Comcast Business Class, and I can get, I have a mid-level Comcast Business Class, so it's like $100 a month or $95 or whatever it is, and then you can pay $5 extra and you get the local PBS and you get the ABC, NBC, CBS, and then the rest of the stuff I watch on NBC. So I'm not going to. They said that the plan. Like to get Fox News Channel, I think CNN's on a lower tier, which is interesting, that CNN's on a lower tier and Fox News on the higher tier. Maybe that's a representative of the audience. But I think it would be like $80-some to get to the tier for Fox News Channel. And I like some stuff on Fox. I can't stand their morning show. I can't stand, but Shepard Smith's good and O'Reilly's interesting. Not that I agree with him all the time, but he always the first half of the show is interesting. But I'm not going to pay $80 for that. And it's not online, so, I'm not watching. And if it's really good, it'll be on one of these YouTube or Media Gazer sites or something if there's a really good clip. But is it worth $80 a month for something, I don't watch that much TV anyway.
I suspect the shadow television business will continue to evolve over time. That there'll be TV, and then there'll be shadow TV. What doesn't show up on mainstream TV will show up someplace else.
Yeah, and if they don't find a better model, there'll still be people who'll be BitTorrenting their favorite television shows, or go down to Best Buy, buy a Sling box, and stick it on your sister-in-law's cable connection, and I can watch her cable. What is it, Centel or whatever it is, where she lives in Forest, on my computers, my phones, anywhere in the world. So split the cost of the cable, get a Sling box, and get 2 for the price.
Well, that's a form of shadow TV.
It is.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I believe shadow TV will continue to evolve, and Netflix and all those things are another form of shadow television. Mm-hmm. They're not selling mainstream stuff. They're selling the stuff that happened before that people used to go to cable to watch, but now can get through these other sources.
Isn't it interesting the quality of programming now that outfits like AMC and some of these others are doing? I mean, I mean, people are becoming a lot more selective in what they watch. And so people are jumping around all over the place. And I agree with you, Thaddeus. I think there'll always be this black market, shall we say, television type thing. You know.
Well, I call it shadow TV because really, they're doing it legally. If I want, I used to laugh as a kid and say, one day when I grow up, I envision a world where we'll have a Star Trek channel. It'll just be Star Trek all the time.
I heard an interesting statistic
We're almost there.
That 50% of people who are watching TV have a handheld device in their hand.
You mean at the same time, or you mean watching the
Simultaneous.
programming there?
No, they're using the smartphone in some way to sometimes simultaneously chatting or tweeting with like Fox News or something like that. But a lot of times they're surfing their smartphone looking for other things. But they're using them for chatting with the TV people. And, of course, now we've got Hangouts on the air, and they could be watching the show live, and they could also be on their phone in the Hangout.
That was on the last Nielsen report, wasn't it, a few months back?
Yes.
It was a certain age multitasking.
Yeah, the report actually seemed a bit surprised. They were surprised by the entrance of this into the market, and people
Did you
were
see
using it
today's one?
interactively.
The
No.
link I put in the box, with the amount of news that was around, which I think has got a massive implication. Have you seen that, Dan, today?
I saw that the prime time versus drama and the interesting where people advertise versus what people watch.
But when you
You
look
know
at
what that chart?
the news elements, which were in yellow, weren't they? There were some tiny news bits there, and somebody suggested on my post they want to get behind the scenes, and rather than doing a news hangout, go and do one from behind the scenes of a recording of a primetime show or something, and then you might get a lot of viewers.
Now, I can tell you, in the interest of marital harmony, that if you're watching TV with your spouse, you do not want a handheld device in your hand.
Good point. Maybe
At
it
least
was
not an Apple or an Android, Bruce.
Maybe the demographic was single,
Yeah.
unmarried, no
Yeah,
significant other.
I find that the times now that I am not looking at a computer or my phone and watching a television thing are few. It's like I love the McLaughlin Group and a couple shows, but I only really watch television like a couple hours a week. Maybe I'm a freak or something, but there's just so much on the internet, and of course I'm a Google Plus addict like most of us, and I just find that's enough. And then when I do watch it, sometimes I want to tune out from the internet, and I'll literally like turn this thing off and I'll watch something on Netflix or whatever, and then just totally relax, which used to be a regular activity, but now I find is a rare privilege or something, because it's not common at all when I totally just disengage from the net, because I know that the longer I wait, the more messages are going to pile up and notifications, and it's going to be more of a hassle when I finally do click back on.
Yeah,
I don't think it is that, Dan. I actually think it's because, not you personally, but I know it is with me, and that is that if I turn the television on and it's a news show or whatever show it is, I have to abide by their rules, which is I watch it, and I can't interact with it. But if I open up a Hangout like I'm doing with you, I can actually be a part of it.
Right.
And get that two-way street. And that's it for me. Yeah, I agree with you. So occasionally I'd like to sit and watch it, very, very occasionally, but I watch zero TV now. But if I do, all I see is, hold on, I can't do anything with this. I can't speak to them. I can't influence them. Whereas you well know I can, or we all can, by being in the Hangouts and on the G Plus stream. And I think that's what you get used to.
It's really funny that you mention that, because this is sort of like, I mean, we don't have the same viewers like a Meet the Press would, or McLaughlin Group, or Good Morning America, or anything, but like Thaddeus just joined us, really intelligent, interesting guy. The kind of interaction and opinions you get on a Hangout, it's not as slick and produced with fancy graphics as a Meet the Press would be, but often...
Well, we're going to work on that, Dan.
And I'm proud to say that I think our show is the best on Google Plus, period. But
Very humble, Dan.
Apart from
very
my
humble,
on-airs. Apart from my on-airs, of course, when I do them.
well, we'll have to duke it out later.
You're kidding? Mine are huge. Mine are huge when I do them. I only get people with... They're only allowed in the room if they got more than 1 million followers, usually. Seriously.
Oh.
So, you know.
This
okay.
is turning into a Fox News versus CNN, MSNBC
Right.
contest.
Some European channel
Yeah,
over
but
there
Mike,
with Mr.
you don't
Downs.
have Oleg and I on.
So I look
But I think as far as I think we do a really good job with the finished product that's on Justin and on YouTube later, and I think we've elevated the game to a degree with as far as the quality of the panel as Mike does, and Mike's now becoming a frequent member of our panel, which is fantastic. But the thing about Hangouts is it's almost like you're in on the Meet the Press panel, and you get to interact, and instead of it being a one-way street and wallpaper, you get to actually stop and say, ask this major player, or if you're
Well,
an ABC fan,
Craig
ask
Newmark-
George Will a question.
Yeah. Well, when Craig Newmark was on the other week, I got the invite, and I got everything, and I made a conscious decision that I thought, and I might be wrong because the room might be full, shall I go and see Craig Newmark tonight? And I thought, with me, it's like midnight or 1 a.m. by the time you go, so I'd have to go from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m., which is not useful. But I made that decision. But if somebody had been on, and I'll tell you, this happened the other day. Now, it was Guy Kawasaki when he was interviewed with Tim Moore on the, I don't know, Crush IQ thing, and it was a very small interview, meaning there was Guy Kawasaki and can't remember the girl's name, and Tim in the room, 3 of them. It was a straight 30 minutes, but there was I thought, and I put some really serious questions to him, and they never got aired because I think it was just a meet and greet, and here's my book, that was it. But when you go to like your show, if somebody comes on, that we're really like that. That week we had when I was on, that was quite fruity. With the what's the name came on. So what I'm trying to say, it gets really stuck in there. But my decision was, shall I go and join in as opposed to just watch? And I feel really helpless if I go and watch a show and I can't, like a TV show, because I can't join in with it. And I find that's a skill now that I want. That's why I'm here, isn't it? I'm sure it's why we're all here.
I mean, like the other day, you and I were in a hangout with Shank from MSNBC, or formerly with, and now with Current from the Young Turks. And both of us got to ask him some questions, and that was just awesome. I mean, he's a nationally known guy if you're into news and politics, and it was off the record. It wasn't recorded or streamed. I mean, it wasn't off the record, but it wasn't recorded and streamed. But I mean, that's amazing. You could just be sitting here, and all of a sudden, Muhammad Ali, or obviously not Muhammad Ali, but
well, it could be. Mike Tyson was in with Maria
Mike
the other day.
Tyson.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah,
in.
she's like, I'm going to hang out with Mike Tyson. Click here to join, and you can ask Mike Tyson a question. They're like, do you really work with pigeons now?
Then before it was Steven Seagal.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
Seagal
then
and-
she says,
yeah.
I got to go. I'm going to try to round up Smokey Robinson. I'll be right back, and then we'll do it again. And I'm just like, God bless Google Plus, because this is just so awesome.
Did you hear the Gene Simmons story?
No.
Yeah, Gene Simmons. Who's he from? Is he from Kiss? Is he?
Kiss.
From somewhere, is he?
Yeah. With the
He
tongue, the
turned
guy
up.
with
Yeah,
the tongue.
but he actually turned up for his television interview. But when he got to Fox 11, he was actually booked on a different TV station in LA, and he got the wrong one. So Shaka and Marie just turned around and said, right, don't worry about that. Come and sit down there and do a hangout with him. And he went, okay then. So out of nowhere, Gene Simmons is sitting down in the hangout chatting. Because he's turned up to the wrong place.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, it's funny stuff, isn't it? I think.
It's fantastic, and they just benefit so much because they're in Los Angeles, and everybody, the world's greatest celebrities are in Los Angeles all the time. Either they live there or they go there because that's part of the deal, and that she's benefits because they're a highly rated station in L.A. and she just snags. I mean, it's the weather girl. She's wonderful, Maria, and she just snags these people and says all the right things and coaxes them and get in front of my laptop. And the coolest thing was Mike Tyson when she sat him down and said, have you ever seen a Google Hangout before? And he's like, no, what's going on, And she introduced him, and he obviously had a good time. And I thought that was so awesome that she introduced Mike Tyson, who was one of the best boxers in modern history, to Google Plus and to Hangouts. And hopefully he'll, eventually find the time to
Can I
get
tell you a quick
engaged
story?
and do his own stuff.
Super quick story. Months and months ago, way back in about October, November last year, I was with Shaka Armstrong at 5 p.m. West Coast time. He said he's got this amazing girl called Maria Corban. I knew nothing. And a couple of weeks later, I think it was like the 18th of December or 14th of December, I got an invite in the middle of the afternoon went in. There was Shaka sat there in that little studio with, you know Shaka, don't you? Shaka Armstrong.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Maria, it was just me and Maria Quaban in the hangout, and Shaka and Maria were sat, in the chairs opposite, and Shaka was literally like, right, okay, this button up here just like is the chat window. If you click here, and if you do that, and she's sitting there going, what?
They have most of these guys.
I remember that. I think
No. The thing is, and I had about between 5 and 10 minutes in there with just me and Maria, because Shaka had asked me in, and we had this like private little talk for 10 minutes or so to familiarise Maria at that point with the interface and how it works, and this is the block button, and then they had a couple of little trusted people. And when I think it's come full circle, to have like Mike Tyson and George Takei and people in there, I think this is fantastic. And now Maria, as you probably know, has just made the suggested use of this, which is a bit contentious, but she's gone up to 87,000 followers. I know that's a different argument, but I'm saying
she blew up. Yeah, she was at about 3,500 a week ago, and now she's at 85,000. She'll get to 1 million quick.
I don't know
who
good
she for her.
With,
good for her.
There was
and they should recommend her.
Also.
Yeah, Shaka Khan was in there as well. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they absolutely, she should be on that list, I think, because anybody who can get, people like George Takei and
not to Shaka. Huh? Shaka Khan, the singer.
The singer,
Shaka
right.
Khan was,
correct, Shaka, Shaka Khan, and George Takei from Star Trek, and Mike Tyson, who would just, could almost beat up Oleg. That I would say that absolutely is someone who is
what's it with
I would recommend that they follow this person, because you never know. I mean, Mitt Romney could pop in, or whoever, George Lucas.
I disagree with your estimate about Tyson being one of the best boxers.
There is a picture in, Kempton Lamb, from Kempton who pops in. I think you probably really opened some doors for and me included, ordinary people, to completely blast. Vegas and LA and all these different places, New York, of course, which is just amazing in many, many ways.
Possibilities are
infinite.
Good fun. I'm surprised that we haven't seen more politicians using this once or twice.
Gary, your volume's really low, buddy. Could you go to your control panel? There you go. Now you're back.
Yeah. I had my speaker thing up, my microphone up on my forehead. But I'm surprised politicians haven't gotten to this, run a hangout a couple times a week with their constituents.
Somehow.
5 or 10 in a room. They could probably get a lot of direct feedback.
People just popped in, and they weren't in my circles at all. And I've had that other times. The hangout yesterday, there were a couple people. I was real concerned because there were like 3 or 4 black squares at the bottom. And then I got a private message that be careful. So, this might be because one time that anonymous group invaded my show, and they started muting people, and it was just.
Oh, this was right up before one of the guys got arrested, right?
Yeah.
Is there a way to block those?
Heard of this deal? Absolutely.
But did you hear what happened last night, though?
I'll be right back. You guys keep the conversation going.
Yeah. Okay.
Sure.
Go ahead, Mike. Last night.
Sorry, I've got another figure. I was just doing a public. Sorry, that's a lie. I was doing a hangout last night, and I had 35 people in it, and then it was going brilliant. Then one person came in the room, and then went through the link out to public, and we'd been going for about an hour and a half, hour and 3/4, whatever, and within 2 minutes the whole hangout had ended because it got thrown open to public, and somebody had come in, and they weren't being indecent or anything, they were just being a bit silly and pressing the wrong buttons, and the whole thing had collapsed all down. And I'm going to say is that we're watching the hangout right now, bottom left underneath apps and that thumbnail for those people who are watching who don't know. And it says the word public, doesn't it? Because somebody has flicked open the, and send those things out. And I'm just saying it's the level of trust, that somebody, and the person who actually did it went, oh, oops, have I done the wrong thing? And this particular person did apologise, but she, was I would have thought the last person on earth who would have done that. And then she's just come in, and within literally 7 seconds of being in the room, had gone, oh, invite. What do I do here? Public woof.
Yeah.
And then people are coming and ruining it.
I'm sure she probably didn't mean for it to become a nuisance, but it's one of these. This is one of the posts. I don't know if you looked at Eric Rice's, multilingual deal, Mike. No, Mike disappears.
I'll be right there.
Okay. Anyway, I guess we'll talk about it tomorrow.
Hey, real quick, I had to do a private post to several of you about the show for tomorrow. saying just that. I said, don't share the link because we're getting people popping in, and it's going to be closed because whenever you have, celebrity types on or big controversial guests, you've got to kind of maintain control, and you want to get everyone in early and give them the ground rules, and we want a fast-paced show because the Google Plus Week gets a lot of viewers. So when these people randomly pop in, I'm not sure how it's happening. And also, Thaddeus, I want to tell you, don't be polite. If you want, if someone's saying something you disagree, jump in there. Be McLaughlin Group like, because I'm listening to you thus far. I'm guessing you've got your polite genes on or something because.
No,
but feel free to chime in if you disagree, especially when Oleg is talking. Feel free to just jump right in there.
Anytime. Particularly when Oleg is talking.
I did Blog Talk Radio,
but you gotta try.
When Blog Talk Radio was big and it was evolving, for 3 years I was on BTR. I had no problem with checking people who didn't know how to act. I had no problem with interviewing people who lacked skills and manners in class. I'm a professional. But I like to listen when I'm still new to the environment. You guys are all, you have a style and you have a way of doing something. So I'm mostly listening and learning. But
we're impressed with you. I could tell you, we're impressed, very impressed with you. And
we're learning here now.
Yeah. So please, like, if Oleg is saying something, or I am, or Alan is, but especially Oleg. Right.
This is the issue, Dan. There's two issues. Certainly from my point of view, when I did that show, the proper show I did with you, I was really, really tired because it got to be like 2 a.m. or something, and you guys had got about 5 hours jump on me, from like at 8 p.m. And I was, trying to compete with it, and I thought, and I was like sitting there like that, and I was sharper like 5 or 6 hours ago, like I am now. It's like, it's 10 o'clock at night, but I'm
plus you probably had some Merlot just off camera going,
Yeah, for Christmas, we need to send Mike some 5-hour energy deals.
That's Mike's ultimate excuse. He's 8 hours.
But seriously, don't be afraid, Thaddeus. If you ever do the regular show, don't be afraid to just bust in there because otherwise you'll sit there.
Yeah, but the other, and as you know, I do a lot of them. But the TV news shows that I do already are very much controlled by the chat box window, and no one speaks unless they're kind of spoken to. Like if you do Sarah Hill stuff, and you do, Maria and people like that, and to come into your stuff, and which is the classic line last week, wasn't it? Where it was Alan or somebody says, "Oh, I've got to cut you off." Da 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 da. Then Alan went and cut you off or cut somebody else off, and then Shriek comes up and cuts Alan off, and then I'm going to think everybody's cutting each other off politely, and it's never going to say anything.
Well, that is, looking at your profile, you're an iconoclast. You'd be a great firebrand in any hangout. You're intelligent, and your background looks really good.
It's one of these deals. In the beginning, we were sitting talking, and somebody new pops into Hangout, and they immediately start. That's one of the things I think that Eric Rice's proposal is so good. When you get into a new Hangout, shut up. Don't say anything. Just listen to because everybody else is talking. It makes no sense to bump in. Hello? It's like we're sitting talking, all of a sudden someone goes in, hello? Or, or the mic is way too loud, or this and that. And that's one of the problems with Hangouts right now is that there's not enough controls for the host to just make sure that, when anybody comes in, they're immediately automatically muted until the host unmutes them. I think that would be an excellent feature.
Or until they unmute themselves. Either way, I'd be happy.
But people don't do that.
Maybe there should be a netiquette.
To keep people out. That's another big thing that they're supposed to introduce that. But, to be able to kick some, because sometimes you get obnoxious people who are strictly there for the purpose of disrupting the environment. They're not there to participate, to engage, to discuss, to suggest, to debate. No, they're just there to basically throw completely off-topic, completely ridiculous stuff on there. And, those people should be kicked out. And there's no easy way to do it now.
When I've worked with a couple of the Google development groups, and they've been talking about building some netiquette, some moderator controls into the environment. But I also think that maybe there should be a netiquette. In the old days, when you did chats online and stuff like that, there was netiquette. There were ways that one could interact with an environment. And the first thing you didn't do when you came into a new environment was to start changing stuff or adding stuff or taking stuff away because you didn't know what had been going on. And so since I've been doing this for like 30 years, I know all the old school etiquette, and so I have, an idea that if I come to a room and I don't know anybody, I just kind of sit there and listen, and I learn what they're talking about, and then decide, do I have anything to contribute? If not, I'm out. Or I just listen and see if I enjoy what they're talking about. So it's...
Oh my God, we're on YouTube Live now. I mean, we're on the...
Yeah.
I apologize. No, we're like, if you go to YouTube... I just got a notification because I've been corrected by Leah Davis, who said you were listed in YouTube Live listings last night, random ordering when refreshing the page, sometimes page 1, sometimes page 3. I just went there now to youtube.com/live, and I clicked to page 2, and there I am.
Excellent.
It's showing our channel.
But
Today's
you need to
news
press-
is great. That's great integration.
Comment though.
That's
That's
the
the,
distraction. That's the distraction technique, though, isn't it?
Remember the key since you were 5?
Try that again.
No, Thaddeus was speaking, and Dan's like come up with the distraction technique to like politely.
No,
cut
no.
I
Thaddeus.
apologize, Thaddeus. I don't take Ritalin. I don't take Ritalin anymore. Huh?
That's
Hey,
good
you
to be.
said
That's good to
IT
be
for
ADD,
30 years.
Dan. It helps.
So does that mean you started when you were 5?
One more time. Oleg Moskalensky in Kirkland, Washington. What did you just say?
I just said Tejas doesn't look any more than 35 to me. So he says he's been in IT for 30 years, which means he started when he was 5.
He's a young man.
No, I started in 1981.
Same here. So we must be the same age.
So Dan, are you saying that you're in the live? I'm on youtube.com/live. Are you saying that you're listed there somewhere?
I just saw myself on page 2 at the bottom right. Let me see where I am now.
You're not on page 2 on mine. There's a chick. There's a chick and an egg.
I see him.
Do you?
I see it.
Which
Now I'm on
is it?
page 3.
On
I think
page 2.
I'm on page 3. It depends which
man.
what second you click on it, But this is a new one because I hadn't seen this initially.
Do you know what? This is immense. This is going to kill all the rest. This is
Oh my
really
God,
huge.
this is huge. This is huge because, and I knew this though. I saw anecdotal evidence because from the very first time I didn't see us on live, so I assume we weren't. But I didn't check it as thoroughly. But I got to tell you that Mike, that from that first hangout, I was seeing comments like, "What is this? What's a hangout? Is this live?" Weird questions, and I was like, you know what? If these people are coming from Google Plus, they would know the answers to these questions. This didn't make any sense. Oleg, you and Alan were there, right?
Right, exactly.
You remember seeing the same thing, and it was a quandary because how are they finding us? Because we didn't see ourselves on live,
So here's
but
a
now
question,
they've integrated it. So this is massive.
Yeah,
No,
that-
this is old. They lifted this from Blog Talk Radio. This is how you do BTR. You go to their site, you look at it, it lists the live shows, and it lists the shows that are coming. This
I used
is
to use that though.
adaptation of that.
Yeah, but you know what? If you want to compare the numbers of YouTube versus Blog Talk Radio,
Well,
I'm
know
sure
there's
Google
no-
will,
no.
anytime.
We know there's no comparison, especially since Blog Talk Radio decided to make people pay. Once upon a time, they used to have thousands of shows, but now that they charge $30 or $40 a month, their shows have dropped to nothing. And I suspect that within a year, 2 years, they won't even exist anymore.
I used to use them early on, and then I'll shut up and let all you guys talk. But I used to use Blog Talk Radio, and I found that it was basically a bunch of hosts and no audience. That the only time I'd ever get anybody, I dumped them. I was paying the $40 a month because this was pre-Hangout. I was trying to, I did a talk show called McDermott Report. I was doing it every day, and I ended up stopping it because I couldn't get guests. I would plan a show, and I would beg and plead someone, will you please come on and we can do a little talk show like we're doing now where we're just discussing the day's news and different topics. And they would, every other time they'd be like, oh, I can't, blah, blah, blah. And it was hard to find people. So I got Blog Talk Radio, and I think either 0 or 1 times I got a random call from a stranger. I don't think I ever did. Huh?
And they were calling the wrong show. They
Exactly. They said, I'm trying to reach Thaddeus, the crazy journalist guy who's angry all the time. No, I'm just kidding.
Quick question, Dan. Quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
But anyway,
question.
Blog Talk Radio, and then I'll shut up. Blog Talk Radio, I found that was mainly hosts and not enough audience, and that you had to set up any calls you got. You didn't just get random calls. So I just was like, this is a waste of money and time.
That's not true because when Blog Talk Radio was popular, like I said, 3 years ago when I first started using it, I had a co-host that we worked with, Sandra Newton. We had a show. We ran it every week. We had callers, we had guests, we had everything. We had we used to do book reviews. So she would get a book, we'd review the book, we do political commentary, and we had people calling all the time. It was very popular. It was only until recently when they changed the protocol, you had to pay for time, that people basically fell off. And almost like magic, the system just went from being insanely popular to having a fraction of the people that used to be on it. But there are shows that get daily listeners. If you go there, you just have to know where they are.
There's a one butterfly lady or whatever she is that's huge, but and then excuse me, let's go to Mike. But just to clarify that, they charge if you want to do your show in what's called prime time.
Right.
Like, I don't know, 8 p.m. to whatever, just like on TV. But I've discovered doing this show, we'll get anywhere from 30 to 40, maybe 100 live viewers on the things that I can count. Some things you can't count. So maybe it's probably more than that, maybe 150 max. But on YouTube alone, we'll get anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 to 4,000 views over a week. So it's dramatically more views after the show's done. And Leo Laporte on Twit experiences the same thing. He'll get a tiny fraction of live viewers compared to what he gets over the course of a week on archive. Because let's talk. I mean, frankly, like, this show is unannounced. We've got 17 watching on YouTube. I don't know if Google Plus is integrated or not. You know, when you post it, you might get more, whatever. Google Plus Week, same thing. You get a few live and a massive number after the fact. Mike, go ahead.
It's a tech question, really. Well, watch this, because I've just discovered something extra. First thing is that you've got the feed, haven't you? You're in your Google Plus thing with a shirt and tie or whatever, and a blue background.
That's my avatar for this channel. Correct.
That's what I was going to ask. And then when you click it, because this is getting confusing with some other things, you've got a square, but it looks like that's that one for Dan McDermott. And there's the show. You got that? Yeah. Then when you go up to subscribe, which I just did, so I need to do it again, there was another one popped up the top of it saying that you might also like, and it said Google Plus Week next to it. I can't seem to get that one at the moment. Let's see if I can bring it down a bit.
Really?
Yeah.
So it's going to pop people over to the other channel.
Well, I don't know. I'm about to ask you is how many channels have you got? Because that said Dan McDermott, and it was in a blue. Unless you've got a different show. What if I took?
No, it's the same thing. I have two channels. I have Daniel P. McDermott and McDermott Report. The reason for that is, I started my shows pre-Google Plus, and I was uploading them on my Daniel P. McDermott YouTube channel, which is affiliated with one of my newspaper email addresses. Then when I signed up for Google Plus, I got an invite because I heard about it, on TechCrunch or wherever, I don't remember, and I was like, oh my God, I was foaming at the mouth, wetting my pants, I got to get on this thing. And so I'd forgotten my old Gmail account, and so I started a new Gmail account, and that's what it associated for Google Plus. And then when they gave me Hangouts on Air, they automatically saved them on a YouTube account created for that was associated with that Gmail address that I used for Google Plus. So it was a different thing, and I like it because I have two versions. I have the produced version where I'm in front of a pretty blue animated background, and I've got a nice logo, and I've got me and the person talking to me here, and it looks like CNN. That's on the official Google Plus Week channel, right? And then other people want to watch the Hangout, which has great pre and post chat and can go hours. I mean, the official show could be an hour or two, and the Hangout can go 6 hours. Some people like one or the other. So I have the produced version on one channel and the behind the scenes Hangout on the other one.
Yeah, here it is. It's the Google Plus Week one, that one.
See, that's what I'm looking like.
Up in your head.
See, I look a lot better on TV than I actually do, right?
No, I mean what I'm trying to figure out is that I found some. somebody yesterday, and they did it on air. The interesting, which is so weird because we know this kind of, but the Guardian UK newspaper hung out today on their first ever on air. The fact that they broadcast a white screen for 7 minutes is like irrelevant. Is the fact that it was there on YouTube. I clicked through and it went to some like 2 initials and a name account. But that account was linked to the Guardian UK, this the story, and so when they're going to start broadcasting big, it's going to some personal account that's got like 6 subscribers, as opposed to the 600,000 the Guardian have got, and these little like errors. And I posted to say, and I really do hope they're watching this, is okay, they follow me anyway, but are you going to take a lot of help from the Google Plus people, who've hung out and done this a lot, i.e. me and you and I'm sure others, for the last 8 or 9 months? Or are you going to go alone a bit, have a go, and then realise after a little while that Hangouts are rubbish and stop? And I think it's as simple as that, because I know a lot of other UK as well as other people who have done it. But I think there's this sometimes a resistance, certainly in the UK, for people to take good advice from the people who've done it. And so, I will say, BBC World Have Your Say have done that in the UK. They've hung out a few times. I don't think they bother anymore because they're trying to play a Twitter text stream questions, a Facebook text questions, and then a live people. And you know what it's like, don't you? If we have to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And even Sarah Hill's station has scaled it back. But at a minimum, it's very attractive. Like you see CBS doing it now with Face the Nation. I'm excited. The Guardian did a thing on fracking today, that method of oil removal. That was their hangout topic, or they're getting ready to. I think they announced that they're doing it. And they did have like 7 minutes of a white screen. I saw them on there, and I thought, wow, this is cool. They're testing a hangout was the title of the Hangout on Air. But the thing is, at a minimum, TV stations should realize that a hangout equals 9 satellite trucks anywhere in the world completely free. And that is a big deal. You can interview anywhere from 1 to 9 other people completely free, as opposed to paying, $300 an hour to get a sat truck, and a guy, to show up.
So if you went to your local, as well as the American TV stations that we know, and said, hey, breaking, fantastic, big news, you can not only do a hangout on air for free, but you can also stream it to iPhones or Androids for free, and people walk around, and guess what? Everybody can watch your shows, and they don't have to be at home in front of their HD telly or whatever it is. The TV station.
Yeah, but I use it as an input device.
Yeah, I'm talking about the TV stations.
Yeah, they should use it as the same way. It's an input device.
Yeah, I know, but I'm talking about the advertising model. So you're one of the I'm sure you're super familiar with this, but I'll repeat it anyway. One of the reasons that the TV stations, unnamed TV stations, do not want their shows going, to mobile devices, to go to laptops or over the web, is because they can't measure it, and therefore they reuse it, lose advertising dollars. And so they're just going to blank it out and say, no, that doesn't exist, that doesn't exist. But I'm saying the overwhelming evidence for, you and me and anybody with on air as well to stream it straight to YouTube. Okay, there's a monetization, but I'm trying to say it's free. Where I just mentioned this $25,000 of whoever it is. And I've been sold specifically, some news stations are offered, when they're building their iPhone app, of like, here's the news, specifically, do you want to go live, with your live news? And they go, no, we don't, because we want people to watch, at home, simple as that for the advertising. And so I'm saying, somebody said, I can't remember who it was earlier on, what's the difference? And I said, I think Gary or somebody, and I said the difference is that the media is changing at an incredible. Here's a question, I know it's probably Google Plus Week question. Are people getting more on-air accounts like right now as we speak? Because I've seen about 5 or 6 unusual ones pop up, But have you heard of like a load of regular people who are just getting on airs for no reason?
I heard a couple anecdotal ones, but I don't see a trend. But I had kind of seen like different ones pop up. I think.
No, you remember what Cheap told us? That their game plan is to allow HOAs for everybody.
Their game is to turn it on. To say like, congratulations, everyone has this now, and we're just. The privilege we have now, and the spotlight on our shows, is very temporary, because it's going to be Joe Sixpack with his webcam, flicking his middle finger up, playing rap music.
I don't know, Dan, if that's true.
Music,
I
or what
don't-
have
I don't
you.
know if that's true.
I think that's the fear. That's the
Well-
only reason they're waiting, I think.
Well, now hold on a second.
No,
Let's just
I
say
think
one
it's
thing.
infrastructure.
Right now, they have
Yeah.
a select group, but I think one of the big concerns they have is how do we control this? We're going to be live streaming stuff. How do we control if crazy people get on and do, say the F word or whatever? How do we control that? And,
But
and
you
what
already
kind
have
of
the
live-
regular Hangouts.
what about copyrighted material being played?
You already have the regular Hangouts, Dan. You have
It's not different. It's different from streaming. It's different deal. That's the thing. I'd be.
You're going to a
I'm
much
sure there are a
smaller
lot of-
audience, but how is it
There's a
different?
lot of concerns. If you were the guy if you were Sergey and Larry who's going to get sued, then I know you're thinking through these things. You're concerned about this, right?
They're not going to get sued. They're not.
I don't think
It's
they're gonna-
No, I don't
different
think
if
they
you're
are.
going stream to stream. If there's 5 of us sitting in a room, we're talking, and we're only talking to each other. That's stream to stream. Everybody's happy. But when you start talking about making it so that it goes to YouTube, which means it could potentially go anywhere,
Right.
I have to agree with you. I think that they may have a problem with that. But at the same time, ultimately, it's going to happen whether YouTube does it or whether somebody else does it.
Right.
All this has done is say, this trick is possible. Now that we know the trick is possible, we need to get it out there as quick as we can because right behind us will be somebody trying to do the same thing. And
Did
we
you
need
see
to
the
be-
Morris?
Sure.
The Moritz post today, everybody. Do you see that one from Germany? Moritz's rant.
Go ahead, real quick, and then let's address some of these YouTube comments.
No, it's
Go ahead.
exactly what. No, the rant from Moritz was that because he is in Germany, and it's specifically about this. He cannot join any on-air hangouts.
Nor can he
Right.
watch. Nor
Right.
can he watch them.
Yeah, because of this GEMA thing that's going on. And now I heard that, and I'm really lucky for this, and I didn't really unofficially hear it, but I guess it just happened in the background that the UK were cleared, for on-airs. And okay, I've got one anyway, but I'm just saying some other things. And now the Guardian's a little example. France wasn't, and then I heard unofficially in a hangout face-to-face with a Googler that France was cleared. And now, and it's going around. I mean, America's America, and then you've got all these European countries. Now, if Germany have got a real problem issues with this, then as Moritz, really got a point that he's going to have real major problems. What I'm trying to say is that, from Thaddeus was saying, is it seems to be, and I thought it was a myth, that the moment, the internet is worldwide, but the moment the internet seems to go across the pond to Europe, all of these different laws are in place. And that's, do you remember the old day that nobody, like Moritz had one, didn't he, and our friend in Vienna had one, they had their on-airs taken away? And the common knowledge was nobody outside the US are allowed one. I don't know if you heard that. Dan,
When was that? When did that happen?
the first weekend. What happened was the very first weekend, the first couple of days of on air, there were certainly about 5 or 6 key people outside of the US who had on airs. 2 of those people lost them the opening weekend. For I do know the reasons, but I'm not saying on what they are right now. But they lost them.
But it was international legal issues.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, the one was, well, they're both in Europe. They lost them, and then there were another 2 or 3 accounts, kind of like very low level in Europe. And now, people like me and a few others have, in Italy and places have got them because I think Google have put some kind of like agreements in place.
I know that in Germany, I don't know what other countries have issues, but what I do for the Friday Big Show is I run it on Justin, which they can pick up in Germany, and they can comment there. And now there's very little interaction on Justin because most people are watching on the Google Player. Because when we do a hot show, the Google Player will explode with comments, and it's just where the action is, more so than even on Google+. Especially since, interestingly, when you click on the Hangouts thing, if you go to Google+, and you click on the left column, the Hangouts button, and then when we're there, if you click on Watch, like we're there now, if you click on Watch, it takes you to YouTube. It doesn't open up a player on Google+. That was very interesting to me. And then the fact that now we're listed actually on the youtube.com/live thing, that's a huge deal, and that explains my initial observations that I know people who are watching are definitely not all coming from Google+. And we lost Mike. And I'm talking to I'm not sure.
Because once you start making those kind of comments, they just cut you off right there. You shouldn't have said that.
So one of these should just be yell at me, not leave.
No, but seriously,
No,
though,
he lost
yeah,
his signal.
I don't think there's. I'm sure there's some consideration about legal and all that, but if they were so anti it, they wouldn't even consider releasing it. The big question, I think, one of the big things is it's a major performance issue that needs to be properly taken care of. Once you open up all this streaming everywhere, you got massive amount of traffic going in compared to what it is now, and they need to be able to handle it so they don't fall on their face. It's not a small thing to all of a sudden just let everybody do Hangouts on air. So I think to me, that's a more prevalent issue than anything else that they need to.
And that's exactly what I think they're doing right now with all those live feeds. I think that they're basically opening them up, leaving them open, and basically, testing the plumbing. How much data can we push through here right now? And can we ratchet that up? 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 Until they get comfortable with how much data can be pushed through. And then they say, well, okay, let's let in this percentage of people and let them move live data. And then they'll have more people and more people. And eventually, when they feel comfortable, they'll open it up and see how many people actually come to play. And a lot of people will come for a minute, and then they'll leave.
Right.
I mean, that's just true. They'll
and
come,
that's why I think Dan's concern is not that important. Not so important, but it's not that serious about all these people coming in, and now the show becomes nothing. It's not like that. Most of these people have no clue compared to you to how to do any of these things. So
no, but that's correct. That wasn't my issue. My issue was when they gave me on air, I had to answer several questions. I had to say that I would do it X amount of times per week. I would agree to give feedback. I would make sure there was no copyrighted stuff going out, and that's why I'm so anal about that. Like, don't play music, don't have a TV going on in the background, that kind of thing. And if they open up widespread, I'm wondering, there's no way to control that, and they're going to get into the same. I don't know how easy it is. I know there technology exists for live streaming. That's a concern. So that's what they're thinking about, and that's why they asked me those questions first. And I don't know how you scale that without some kind of selective process and monitor it after the fact. I don't know if the technology exists, and I think that is actually the bottleneck more so than building server farms to accommodate the throughput. Let me go to Leah Davies, who has some good comments here. She said we were listed in the YouTube live listings, and we're on there now. Thanks for being on earlier. My pleasure. Yes, it was suggested the Google Plus Week to her as well when she was watching on YouTube. The Guardian just added the +1 button to their website this week too. I'm glad they're getting into Google Plus. I think a lot of that is probably Jeff Jarvis making them do it and getting them on board, because he writes for them and he's a big Google fan, author of a hopeful future guest for us. But he's author of What Would Google Do and Public Parts. And then what did Justin TV and the rest do about live streams and copyright? I'm guessing they haven't been sued as much as Google has, and so they're maybe not as cautious. I'm not sure, but that's a good question. I guess they can act on complaint, but they're more permissive. I mean, they're more risky, and they're available in Germany. So I'm glad I make that stream available so that folks in Germany can watch the stream and have a place to comment, where most of us watch and can read the comments and if appropriate and react to them. So that's cool.
So
I want to be in as many places as possible. Oleg?
Did you hear any of the music?
Are you playing music?
I was trying to get a little bit of a sense of a real TV to you, to have some background music going.
Well, I heard lots of music when you were at your child's school earlier.
No. Can you hear this or not?
We'll probably get an email about that if you raise the volume a little bit. That may be enough, because Bruce was just playing a few seconds of a couple songs. It's a bad idea, Oleg. You shouldn't do that.
Is Canadian groups, are they still...
I mean, it's a violation of the agreement that I accepted when I took it, so I can't,
Well, so how does that work? If I come in and I play music, I didn't accept this agreement, you did. So why would
That's why I can't invite public.
I see. So basically,
I'm responsible for the conduct of my guests.
okay.
Yet anybody can apparently just hack in, as we've seen in a couple recent hangouts. So anyway, any final thoughts, Thaddeus? This was great talking to you, by the way. You were awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate that. No, I had a great time. I enjoyed this. This was good. This was a lot of fun. It reminded me of doing Blog Talk Radio just with pictures. So I enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to doing it again.
And you need to move all your white space behind you to the right side so you can be in keeping with the meme that happened behind you. I see you've got white space on the left side of your screen, but not the right side, because you got all your pictures on the right side.
Oh, well.
I don't know if did you see that meme about all the criticism about the blank space on Google Plus on the right side, and
Oh, yes.
the slab of bacon and the cat and the beer.
Right.
I noticed you're really busy on the right side, but on the left side you're empty. So we need to switch all your
that's
stuff.
a wall, and then that's a door. That's a door to another room.
That's true.
So when that's open, you can actually see inside the room. What I'm going to probably do, if I do this on a regular, I'm going to probably just get a shoji or something like, who has that? One of the guys has a shoji. Bruce has a shoji behind him.
Mm-hmm.
You put it behind you. And
You could do that, or you can get some green fabric. I'll tell you what I did for my show, and it looks great. I went to, I was gonna order from B&H a green screen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can get a green screen and then use something like what's it called? Manycam. Yeah, but Manycam is a free app that will replace, with whatever background you want. That's what you see a lot of guys using. But I actually what I did was I took my Android phone and I did a Google search for chroma green and images, and then I filled my screen up. I clicked on one of the images because they all kind of look the same, and I clicked on that image and I went through the fabric store because I just wanted to play with it and try it and see if it worked before I bought the fancy one. And so I just went to the fabric store and I just held my phone up to different swatches until I got almost like a straight up perfect match to match my phone with the fabric. So I said I want 2 yards. And that's what I have behind me when I'm doing the show because it worked so well. I never ordered the fancy one. And it's not as important that it be well lit as it be evenly lit.
Right.
So
Well,
if
I'll
you
work on that too. If I do this on a regular, I'm going to get a different set of lights and make that right.
And also, Thaddeus, we don't charge $40 per show. It's like $20.
Whatever. Don't make me hawk my book here.
These Russians keep trying to charge the guests.
Trying to get this stuff monetized. The guy just doesn't play ball here.
Well, no, we can monetize. I'll sell my book. I'll hold up my book. That'll be your advertising. There you go.
Which book? Do you have a book out?
Yeah, I wrote a book last year.
Which book? That is.
It's a science fiction book called Hayward's Reach.
Can you give me a link, please?
Sure. You can find it on Amazon.
Okay, excellent.
I'm going to just I'll just give you a link to where.
We should, unless you object to it, but.
No, I don't object.
No, I'm talking about Dan. Let Thaddeus pitch the book on the show.
Yeah, what's the book?
It's a science fiction book.
Science fiction book right there. Here's the link.
Oh.
Yeah, I write sci-fi. You can read some of my stuff online as well.
Do you know a guy named Leonard Barnhart who writes zombie novels, science fiction?
I've seen his name. I haven't read any of his work, but I've seen his name.
I just saw him today. He's a local guy here. He's a very good friend of mine, and he writes these crazy stories about zombies. And I think the guy who wrote, what's the famous zombie book and movie? He wrote a foreword in his book. But he goes to book signings, and apparently he's a big star in that genre, and he goes to all the right, Comic Cons or festivals or whatever they do, and he's all the rage, but to us he's just Lenny,
I'm just a regular sci-fi guy. I write a little bit of science fiction, a little bit of fantasy. I don't have a genre that I specifically write for. If anything, I'm an environmentalist. I tend to write environmental sci-fi. I dislike so much of what our society does with the world we live in. So a lot of times I write about how that can go wrong and what might happen when it does.
Okay, one last question, and then I gotta call it quits. But one guy said, Dan, do you agreed to that? But would that mean everyone in the Hangout? Oh, I think what he's saying is about the thing. Yeah, I'm responsible for the conduct of the people in my Hangout, and I had to agree to that. And that's why when people will say, like, I can't get in, and I want to invite it to public, but I can't because it physically won't let you. I can invite my circles and my extended circles, or I can invite, specific circles or people by name, but I cannot open it up to the public. And then we had Chichu in a Hangout, who's the head of Hangouts, and I asked him, I said, are we allowed to post the link if we want? And he said, yeah, you won't get in trouble, but just make sure nothing illegal is going on. And that's their concern. And I think that, Google obviously has massive capacity, probably unprecedented, but it's just, I think their big concern is ironing out these legal issues because they don't want a bunch of news stories and lawsuits and, issues. It's a big hassle, right? And I don't know how you could take, imagine right now we're listed on YouTube Live, we're on the Google Hangout thing, we're on Google Plus, we're on my channel streaming live. I don't know if there's any software, we could be playing records or movies or whatever, you know what I mean? They can have a human being monitor these things, which they're doing now, because you can see certain things popping off or staying on, so they must like us because we're staying on. But I could totally see, if you open this up to everybody, massive concern about copyright infringement and potential liability. I don't see I don't know if the technology is out there to interrupt a live stream if you detect copyrighted materials in the same way that they can take their time processing a YouTube video and detect those things.
I would say the possibility should exist. Packet sniffing can detect any number of things. All I would have to do is sniff a couple of packets, see that there's music in it, and just say, hey, turn that off. I'm
just thinking they haven't figured it out yet.
Well,
I'm thinking that's the reason for the delay. I could be wrong.
Let's take a look from Oleg and say the possibility is always being evolved right before our eyes. Google's full of really smart folk, and if anybody's going to be able to find a way to packet sniff live streams of data right on the fly, if they see copyrighted material, it would be them.
And the other concern, of course, Thaddeus, is when Chat Roulette opened up, and they had all those crazy photos, the one guy with the leather face mask, and all the in the news to explain Chat Roulette to the mainstream. I'm sure Google Plus Hangouts would not want to be defined in that manner when they first open up on air. Yeah. And I can only imagine if you get like a Cam 4 type invasion or what have you, live listed, and I'm sure they get a lot of views and be bumped up on the YouTube Live list, you know what I mean? So I'm thinking there's some logistical things that they just haven't quite figured out how to deal with, and I can't imagine trying to figure that out.
Well, I figure what I'll do is I'll take a look through all of the live streams today and see what's in there. And since you say they don't allow copyrighted music, maybe what we'll see a lot more of is people making their own music. Yeah. Because when I was on BTR, that's what I did. I made my own music. I have, music creation software. So I just made my own music, and then I didn't have to worry about it.
Thaddeus, do you play anything?
Oh, no, I use computer. Well, I did play music when I was young, but I do computerized music now using things like FL Studio and stuff like that.
Very cool. So there you go then. See? It has to be some sort of jazz fusion, though.
Yeah, you just make your own. Or go and find some. There's plenty of guys on SoundCloud who you would probably license music from, or just get music just to be able to show their stuff off. They'd be happy to let you do that.
I'll get a drum machine then. We'll put some stuff together for you.
Do a digital live improv.
Absolutely.
I'll wait to see that one.
Awesome. Well, hey, listen, guys, I appreciate it. Go ahead. Yes, sir.
You need to add me to your circle so when you do your next show, I can remember to show.
No, absolutely, we'll do that.
I think you are. I think I've added you.
I'm asking, how many kids do you have?
Me? Yeah. I have one little one left now. He's the last one. He's 8, and he'll be home from school in just a little while.
Gotcha.
You are in my circles, Thaddeus. Yeah.
I read your profile. Anyway, we'll talk about it when nobody else is listening, but very cool. Thank you.
No worries.
All right, Thaddeus, it was awesome. Oleg, I got to talk to you about something in a little bit.
All right, gents.
All right, thank you, Thaddeus.
You're welcome.
Thank you, buddy. And thanks, Oleg. I'll hit you up in a minute. I got something on this side I got to talk to you about. But anyway, thanks everybody for watching. I appreciate it. This has been today's wild and interesting news conversation about all kinds of things. We talked about all kinds of stuff. We met Thaddeus. It was great. So thanks for watching, and I will catch you, Oleg. Be prepared for a notification. This was great. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.
Always a pleasure.
Have a great Thursday.